Welcome to Are You Awake? I'm Ari.
I'm Alex.
And we are here with two special guests, Amber and Stacy. Would you guys like to tell the people who you are?
I'll let you go first.
My name is Amber Cecil. I actually live up in the Greeley, Evans area, but I'm a mama and I sit on some boards, like the board of the Greeley Republican Women, the board of the Moms for Liberty Northern Colorado chapter, Weld County chapter, and the Weld Faith Partnership Council. So I sit on some of those things, and I sort of got involved with this because my daughter was going to a charter school. We sort of thought it was like a great place to be. We'd always heard just really good things about the charter school, and there was like a shift that happened. Somewhere from kindergarten to second grade there was a shift, and I wanted to know what it was. So I started digging. We actually ended up pulling her out of that school, but I just wanted to do some digging. So that's sort of how I kind of got involved in all of this to begin with.
Right.
My name is Stacy Castile, and I also am a mom. I live in Greeley, and when my daughter, who's my oldest child, was about 6 months old, I had already known that I was never going to put her in the Greeley-Evans School District because it was such a mess. She had a half-brother that was going through, and I was just flabbergasted about the lack of education he was honestly getting. And so I actually had put her on a wait list for the same charter that Amber's daughter had gone to. But we ended up moving to Fort Collins before she even started kindergarten. So I thought, phew, I'm safe. It's Fort Collins. Fort Collins is so much better at like everything than what Greeley is, right? And then we ended up moving back to Greeley, and I thought, okay, I found K through 8. It was not, it's kind of a weird situation. It's not the neighborhood school, but it's not necessarily a charter school either. You have to apply to get in, but it's still part of the Greeley-Evans School District. And I thought, this is a way better place to go. In Fort Collins, my daughter was not learning anything about the United States of America, but could make an amazing Islamic flag at arts and crafts time. My husband is in the Air Force, and as you can imagine, that did not fly for him. So my stepson was going to this school, and I thought, this is way better. They say the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. So like right there, leaps and bounds. So we got my daughter into there, and shortly after that I started to see more of the cracks in the district more firsthand. And so that's when I really started to become more involved. And then now I have a son who is 6 that he will never, ever encounter the Greeley-Evans School District unless there's some type of drastic change. And honestly, I don't think he'll ever attend public school because no matter what we do with the superintendents, no matter what we do with the school boards, that craziness that's going through it's running rampant in the public schools. And so he'll probably always go to a private school. And so I've really gotten involved. I started out sorry, this is a little long-winded. I started out attending a Greeley Republican Women's meeting, and it was right after the 2020 election, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is my place. And then shortly after that, January 6th, 2021 happened, and the Greeley-Evans School District sent out an email to us offering North Range Behavioral Health, so counseling, for the students for the traumatic events that happened at the U.S. Capitol. And that was pretty much, I had some times where I had spoke up to them and said, this isn't okay, but that was pretty much the final one. I send them probably an email at least twice a month, if they are lucky. And so I really started to say, wait a minute, like, what about the entire summer? when we had Black Lives Matter burning our state down, there was a Black Lives Matter rally in Greeley.
There was one here, right? There was one here in Berthoud. Yeah.
And so I asked them, why weren't you guys offering behavioral health services? It was COVID. It was locked, in your house time. You guys didn't have any type of suggestions then. And so it was kind of that turning of events that made me start to pay attention at a deeper level of what was going on. I started attending the school board meetings. I got on the World Faith Partnership Council. I am on the Human Services Advisory Committee, and I have decided that I am going to be running for school board in the Greeley-Evans School District this November. So that's, in a nutshell, kind of how I got to where I am.
Nice. That's so awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome to see moms getting involved and getting on fire and not tolerating what is happening.
Yeah. I've disabled my TikTok only because I could see what a time suck it was, and not so much because who's finding it. But my handle on there was Mama Bear Will Eat You. And it was because when it was, what was it, Musical.ly before it was TikTok or whatever, my daughter had it. And we're starting to kind of hear about how maybe predators were using it to get access to children. And so the only way that she could keep it was I had to lock it all down, and then I created an account so that I could stalk her. And so that was why I picked Mama Bear Will Eat You, because I thought if I ever saw, if she posted a video, if somebody I didn't know, commented, it was like immediately like, oh,
Right.
maybe I should not talk to this person and this kid. So that was kind of my hope. But yeah. I think it's great to see we are in this time where the mama bears are done, and I think we are shaking our husbands awake as well, and they're getting more involved too.
Yeah, my husband definitely doesn't like any kind of confrontation. He tends to be, but I see him get angry now when I'll come home and I'll say, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe the email that Stacy got. Oh my gosh, you're not going to believe what I just found out. And I tell him, and he kind of is just like, what? So now he's, he's paying attention more and sending me things, and but still kind of let's us do the legwork, but they've got our backs, and it's good to know that too.
Well, and I think too, if it came down to it, if we said, hey, there's a school board meeting, you guys need to come.
You need to be there.
We need to fill the room or whatever, they would definitely.
Yeah.
And my husband has recently started going as well when he's off.
Yeah, because the interesting thing about it is when we show up, they like to fill the room. It's like there's a room that they have to go in. You have to gain access through some doors and through security, of course. And they tend to put us in the overflow almost immediately.
Yeah.
So they know.
They have
they know who
the
we all are.
boardroom has two entrances. There's the main entrance, and then there's like a little back door by the dais, right next to, the board members can come in that way without, going through the commoner's door. But what we started to notice in January, I think it was, we started to notice that we weren't getting into the boardroom anymore. The door would be locked, but we would see people coming in, and then they were what I would consider maybe a nobody. It wasn't a board member. It wasn't the superintendent. It wasn't any of her cabinet. It
wasn't even really teachers or administrators or anything of that nature. It wasn't somebody that you would be like, oh, they need to be there because they're presenting, or they need to be there.
It was not very obvious. And I actually had a sit-down conversation with the gentleman that's going to be taking over for security, to be the head of security, when the current guy who's doing it retires, which is maybe this year.
Who's also the mayor of Greeley.
Also the mayor. And so I said, what is the deal with this? Like, why is this happening? Because at one meeting, I actually got in that door, and I got to the boardroom. But then the next meeting, so 2 weeks later, I tried to go in through the same door again, and I was stopped. And he said, Stacy, you can't go in this way. You need to go to the other door. And I said, okay. So I went to the other door and I started taking pictures of all the people inside of it, and I posted it on Facebook and I tagged them in it, you know, saying like, oh wow, look, you guys are telling some people they have to come through this door, but letting obvious other people. And the future head of security had said that they are letting people who are presenting come in that door, because it is getting, the boardroom is filling up a lot more, and they want to make sure that they have a seat. But he was actually great, because the last meeting that we had in February, we have a group called the Greeley Dream Team, and they are a foundation that raises money to help give Greeley Evans District 6 graduates scholarship money. And they had probably 60 people in their group. And so he had actually told me that day, hey, you're probably not going to find a seat inside the boardroom. But he said, as soon as they leave, because they'll leave as soon as the presentation is done, but not the meeting, he said, we'll let you come in. And he was great. He probably reached out to me like 3 or 4 times, hey, there's 4 extra seats. And so then I would go and tell my friends, like, okay, we got, some people can go in. I was not able to attend the meeting that they had this last Monday, but they said that he was doing that again, where he would come. He was very, polite to our side, because that's really what it's come down to, is pretty much our side and their side.
Their side, yeah, for sure. That's so true.
I think people realize that things are happening at a local level. The messiness of politics isn't at the top level. It's happening right in our hometowns.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where it needs to be happening.
Absolutely.
It's actually, it's great to see that it's not just us, like, that have been dealing with things. It's not just us that have seen it, that we have this great, amazing group of parents who have decided that enough is enough.
Yeah.
We're done. And we have to have a voice in this. So that would be kind of my advice for people, is if even if you can't flip a board, which that's the hope, right? That we can flip a board and we can turn it so that it's not all this left ideology that's coming through. But even if you can't flip it, and you can flip a seat, and you can have one person in there who's just pokes,
Right.
makes it annoying, right?
Yeah.
That can sometimes,
Do something.
it actually brings awareness, because then you have
Right.
somebody who's on the floor who's bringing things up, who's bringing awareness to things. So then people in the room are going to go, wait a minute, why
Yeah.
didn't they let that happen? Or why is this going on?
Right.
Well, I think it's
So-
going to encourage more parents to stand up as well, because parents are scared to stand up.
Lots of reasons.
It's
Lots of reasons.
definitely.
Probably retaliation on their kids.
Yes.
Would be, I would think, the number one reason why they don't.
For sure.
And-
the
and-
bullying in schools
Absolutely.
is
Bullying from
awful.
teachers.
Yes,
Yeah.
teachers, all the staff, and you're right, retaliation. I had complained about some of the curriculum that my daughter was getting. It was social emotional learning and critical race theory to a T. And so I had originally reached out to the teachers and said, I have a problem with this. And I'm not sure if they were intimidated or if they were trying to intimidate us. But parent-teacher conferences were a couple of weeks later, and one of the assistant principals had asked if she could join us, my husband and I, when we went to go talk to just 2 of the teachers, the ones that I complained about, so that she could take notes about, the encounter. So I don't know if the teachers said, hey, we don't want to be left alone with these people. Can you sit in here? Or, make sure that nothing got out of control. I'm not sure, but that could definitely be intimidating for parents too, right? Like, oh man, the assistant principal had to sit in, and during parent-teacher conferences, I don't want to say anything again, or some of those fears.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, I don't want to say that that every teacher in the district is bad, because they're not. I mean, there's some incredible educators. But I do think that they are, getting their voices limited on what it is they can speak on, because they're afraid.
Yes.
They're afraid to lose benefits, or they're afraid they might get fired, or they might not get that next step up in their pay grade, or whatever the case may be. So and it's these things that are coming in that they're being essentially forced to do.
Yeah.
That they, a lot of them, they just end up leaving. They've been leaving districts. They go for less pay in private schools or less pay, and you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
Before school started, I think it was right before, the teachers come back and a little bit before the students do. And I mean, we had a principal, they fortunately didn't tell me who, because I probably would have done something with that politely.
always politely.
In Christian love. But the principal told the staff, you need to put your white privilege away. You need to check your white privilege at the door. This is the principal, like, trying to get his staff ready for the school year. So it's really hard because of how intricately this is in everything.
And we can talk about that. We'll touch on that a little bit
Go
because
for it.
with social emotional learning, that is essentially what they're doing. So SEL, you may hear it as SEL. It is
Or social emotional redirection.
Yeah,
That's
they
another
because
one.
they keep changing the terminology. They even keep changing the definition, to be honest with you. So I actually have what CASEL says it is, and CASEL is sort of they set the gold standard for what social emotional learning is. It's the collaborative for academic social and emotional learning. So they kind of set the tone for everything. They're the top when it comes to integrating this. So their definition of social emotional learning is, we define social and emotional learning as an integral part of education and human development. SEL is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. So really, when you're looking at that with an uncritical eye, you're kind of like, okay, they use some really fancy language,
Right.
some really feel-good words in there, and so I really think that that's sort of how they've duped parents into this, is because parents are like, yeah, my kid probably does need to learn a little bit more of how to control their emotions, and I want them to be able to make really good, caring and responsible decisions. I want
Right.
those things for them. But little do they know that this is actually, it really is a vehicle to bring anything into the school.
Right.
They sort of approach this CASEL, and when I say they, I say CASEL, approaches it from a whole school, whole community, whole child aspect.
Well, and I think some of the parents also are very interested in it because, I mean, nobody wants your kid to get bullied, right?
Right.
Nobody wants somebody to be
Yep, they bring it in
mean
under the guise of
to your
anti-bullying
kid.
too.
And so they think, oh, good, Alex is finally going to learn how to act right, kind of that mentality.
Yeah.
And, to be upfront and honest, I'm assuming you as well,
We.
are not necessarily against the ultimate concept, right? Like, you don't want to be a jerk. You don't want
No.
kids to be jerks, and they're pretty notorious for that, right?
We have a funny hashtag. We won't say it on this one.
But when I was a kid, I remember something similar to this. But we talked about warm fuzzies and cold pricklies. So when you're nice to somebody and you help somebody out, that's going to give them a warm fuzzy. But if you're mean to somebody and you hurt them, that's going to give them a cold prickly, and how that might, warm fuzzies, people are going to want to be your friend. Cold pricklies, nobody's going to want to talk to you, kind of. So there's not a problem with that. It's to the extent that it now goes. And social emotional learning is very intertwined with critical race theory.
Very intertwined.
It's actually very hard to try to separate the two. You really can't have one
Without
the other because if you look at it from the stance of, so critical race theory is the ideology that based off of your race you may have had more opportunities naturally or less opportunities naturally. And so what they're doing and how they're intertwining them is by saying, if you see the black child, you should let them win because they're probably already at a disadvantage. something along those lines. So, right, you're being nice and polite, and that's how they're trying to introduce it, but really, it's becoming racist.
Right. It's like so like they're trying so hard not to be racist and trying to be so nice that it's like actually turning into the opposite.
It is.
My children are mixed. My daughter is half white. Shocking, right? And half Hispanic. My stepson is half white, half black, and then my youngest son is half white, half black. And one of the things that I say over and over, you guys are not victims. Your skin tone has never decided any outcome in your life. Right. And it won't, You're going to encounter racist people.
Right.
Because evil is everywhere. You can't get away from it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
it's like women too. Women were very much pushed down in society. And it's like, what are you gonna do that for women too? Or are we gonna do that for?
I'm sorry, Ari. We don't even know how to define a woman these days.
And that's what I was just gonna say. We definitely are going backwards in that whole thing. I was a tomboy as a kid, and I loved to play sports. Loved them. But I would rather have the satisfaction of playing a game of basketball at lunch, wearing my heels and my dress because we had a basketball game that day, and playing basketball with the boys and making a 3-pointer on them, than them giving me, or me saying, okay, you guys can't guard me because I'm a girl. You got to make it equal for me. Like, instead of that, that's... And it goes the same way women as it does ethnicities. I would rather have my children, excel despite whatever society thinks for the reasons why they shouldn't excel.
Well, that's it. It's approaching every situation as a racist situation. Right. So everything is through everything is through the lens of racism. So you say because you're white, you have privilege, and actually, you need to check that at the door.
Yes.
And if you're black or you're brown, or even if your immigration status is not, a citizen, that you're immediately, no matter what, you have a disadvantage.
You're a victim.
Yeah. And so really when all of this social emotional learning has come into the schools, it really is a driver for equity. And we know that equity is not as it sounds. They try and interchange equity and equality to be the same thing, and they just aren't.
They're not.
Equity is saying that you're going to have an equal outcome. And equality is an equal opportunity.
Right.
And we want the equal opportunity. Kids should have an equal opportunity. But what you get out of it is all what you put in.
Yep. Right.
You're not going to get the same exact outcome for every child because, let's be honest, they're not going to put in the same effort.
No.
Yeah.
Because they're human beings that way.
Well,
they're not going to do everything the same.
This also starts to open up a whole other Pandora's box. I bet we didn't even have any realization that we were going to encounter. But, we've been so focused, the last 4 years, 5 years, on pronouns. Maybe not even that long. But where we're starting to go now are adjectives.
Yes.
And how, holding on to these are my adjectives and you must respect them. The school board in Greeley, it's Greeley-Evans District 6, so I might just say District 6, so I don't have to. But in District 6 at a work session, they had the school board members go through this workshop of talking about what are your adjectives? And so you had to say 4 or 5 things. So, I could say I am a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a Christian, I'm a woman, we'll just do those 4, I can't think of another 5th one. And then start talking about, okay, now imagine someone didn't know what one of your adjectives were. So say you didn't realize I was a Christian. and you start telling, that you're an atheist or something along those lines, or Satanist, and how that might be offensive to me because they don't realize that I'm a Christian and that they should respect that kind of a thing. And it's like, well, maybe we should just be teaching people, like, try not to be offensive, in the first place, or also not carrying offense.
Right.
I mean, whether you're religious or not, how many people are walking in offense? Right. Always ready to be offended. Always
ready to be triggered.
To be triggered.
Use that word, triggered.
Well, this society is creating a bunch of, I would say, narcissists.
Yes.
100%.
That's what it's leading to, is we're just going to have a bunch of narcissists running around.
Well, we've changed from the golden rule. The golden rule of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Like, treat me the way you would want to be treated. And now it's this platinum rule, right? So it's treat me the way I want to be treated.
Yeah.
And you should know.
Well, that's ridiculous. I don't know how you want to be treated because that's just a ridiculous concept.
In life. I don't know
your well, and it's actually this entire concept of, so I'm really upset that when you guys asked us to introduce ourselves, you didn't ask my imaginary friend that was sitting right here the entire time to introduce themselves.
Right.
Like, wait a minute. So now we have to actually know you have an imaginary friend.
I mean, it's things that are that ridiculous, you know. And I do blame a lot of this on SEL because it's been in the school system for a while. Like, it really was introduced in the early 90s. That was sort of the big push on it, but that's when it wasn't like it is now. Really, there was a big shift that sort of happened. There was this, the Aspen Institute did this commission where they sort of reviewed SEL curriculum, and they said, okay, we're going to look at this, and then we're going to give some recommendations. Well, they say it's like all these people, that it was a bipartisan. No, it was not. If you start to look at the key players in it, the co-chair of this commission is the co-founder or whatever he wants to call himself of SEL, who sits on the board of Castle. I don't know if he's on the board or if he's the CEO, something along those lines. So he's he's a big key player in this, and you just kind of go, okay, so how can that be an unbiased look at this, right? Well, they came back with all of these suggestions. And the people who were involved really were like partner groups that they've been involved with. And so one of the things that they said afterward was, well, we just want to make sure that all the resources are available to everybody. Well, it's because they wanted their resources to be available. So Castle comes out in 2020 with this shift. It was a really big shift, too. From going from just SEL to a transformative SEL. And transformative SEL just brings in a whole other mess of things, because this is where we're having to look at everything from a socially acceptable answer, right? A politically correct answer, a politically correct lens on everything. And so that's where it's just gotten a little messy. And you see the shift and you feel it. And again, they do this whole child, whole community, whole school aspect to it, meaning it has to be part of every part of school.
Yeah,
in District we're talking
6,
like wood shop and PE.
Music. District 6 is now entering it into music. How do you, was it Castle that had the description of love bombing?
Oh yeah, okay, so
I wanted to touch on that with something that you had said.
So okay, they're basically putting this blanket on the entire school and saying, we're going to do this psychological mental health curriculum for the entire school, right? That's what we're going to do. Now, of course, we're going to come up with some kids who are going to be really difficult to change, right? Because I've actually found that children who are rooted in Judeo-Christian values tend to be really hard to shift out of that.
Oh.
So it's really hard to get them to conform. So now we really need to combat that, because we can't have children thinking for themselves, right? We need to teach them how to think and feel and react and decide. So, was it State of Indiana? Indiana, they joined up with Butler University, and they came out with a what did I call it? A neuroscience toolbox, like a way to combat this with lessons and 100 different videos that they can watch. And one of the things they were talking about in it is neuroplasticity. I don't know if you know what neuroplasticity is.
I remember hearing about that.
Okay, so neuroplasticity is sometimes it's referred to as the brain's like superpower. So it's this concept that you can change the pathways in your brain
Right.
based on different stimuli and trauma and different things that sort of come at you. So brains are not hardwired like they once thought, right? Your brain
Right.
really, it develops rather quickly when you're little, and they really thought that for a long time it was hardwired. That was it.
Yeah.
Whatever you learned, that was it. But they've decided now that neuroplasticity exists and that you can actually change those pathways by introducing different habits, different feelings, different ways of thinking and feeling. So now you've changed your brain. So essentially they're trying to brainwash our children.
Right.
I mean, any way you slice or dice it, they're trying to change how your child thinks and feels and changing the pathways in their brain. And they do that with a few different things. Propaganda being one of them. They'll have maybe posters or resources to posters that they can go ahead and print off, and they're going to be things that are, really subtle in a classroom. They might not necessarily be like right in your face, but they're there.
Yeah.
And it'll be like posters like Black Lives Matter, or Love is Love, or that communist fist, or maybe changing out your American flag to a pride flag, or changing out your American flag to a BLM flag.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily things that are just like, here, we're shoving this in your face,
Right.
but it's there.
Yeah.
And it's something they encounter every single day, right?
Right.
Another thing that they do is this constant self-criticism. So always looking internally, like always looking at, well, what about your white privilege, right? These things like that, or, well, you're black, so I'm sorry, you're
Yeah.
already oppressed. So
Mhm.
so it's this constant like self-look. And I think reflection is good. Reflection is not a bad thing, but in the context that they're doing it, it just doesn't work, right? It just doesn't work. And then they do the love bombing. The love bombing is.
Do you guys know what love bombing is? Have you heard of it?
I don't think I have.
I've heard of it with like narcissists.
So that's why I
and-
wanted to bring it up because
Yeah.
yes, so love bombing is what we're starting to find is like the number one tool that a narcissist will do. So what they'll do is you will do something that they don't appreciate or like, and so then they will lash out at you.
Right.
And then you kind of go, oh my gosh,
Right.
and then we're over or whatever you end up having to do, and then they hit you. I love you, beautiful. I miss you, beautiful. I can't live without you, beautiful. Oh, you're
Right.
so beautiful. Good morning, beautiful.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, I'll
They'll
never
spend
do
a
that
lot
again.
Of time with you.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Sweep you off your feet,
Mhm.
and then the next time they're gonna do, snap at you again, and then they keep doing it,
They
and
they
it's
just
like
keep
the
doing it,
number one tool that narcissists use.
Yes. So they do this with our kids in the way of, well, you aren't giving me the socially acceptable answer in this, so
You're in trouble.
you're in trouble.
Mhm.
But when you do the right habits and you do the right things, I'm going to praise you and reward you.
Mhm.
And then what happens? You see other kids looking at this going, well, I want praise and reward too, so I'm
Yes.
going to do what they're
Right.
doing. So it's
Yeah.
easy to follow suit.
Mhm.
One of the other things they do is isolation. Isolation is huge for kids because they want to be accepted.
Mhm.
Adults want to be accepted. We see it in grown adults that really they want to have a group of peers that accepts them, and when you can use isolation as a tool for that love bombing, right? Well, you didn't do what we wanted you to. You need to go over here. Kids, when they feel that, they're going to avoid that at all costs. I know my daughter specifically has really big issues with being left out. That's a huge thing for her, and so that would easily be a way to manipulate, right? An
Right.
easy tool to use.
Well, and not only a tool to use, but tricks to teach, right?
Mhm.
I mean, like you said, turning them into narcissists, we are teaching them all of these very scary tactics. And then to just kind of an example of like how it could just randomly pop up. Oh man, it's probably been about 3 or 4 years now. My stepson was in the car. We were just chit-chatting, you know, and he says, I don't think I'll ever be gay. No offense. And I was like, hold the phone. Back it up. Why did you say no offense? Like, that's really weird.
Right.
Especially for, I think he was in 7th grade. Like a 7th grader. Like,
Yeah.
who taught you that that might be offensive to someone? Like, where is this coming from, kind of a thing? And he said, well, at school, if you say you're not gay, they start to say that you're homophobic. And so they have to hurry up and cover their bases so that nobody cuts them down, because they want to be accepted. They don't want to be isolated.
No.
They don't, I mean, I don't know. If somebody said, I don't think I'll ever be straight, no offense, I wouldn't be like, huh, offended. Like, no. And I don't think that a gay person would have the same response either if he would have said, I don't think I'll ever be gay, but cool. Not your cup of tea. No big deal. You know, kind of a thing. But this is what they're implementing. We have a teacher in the District 6 that, this is a little bit of telephone, so I'm not going to say exactly, but it sounds as if they have a high number of potentially transgendered children in one classroom, and it's a 4th grade classroom. So it's just learning this. You know, there was a documentary called Transwrecked. I think it was Transwrecked.
Transwrecked. I don't know. We've done a lot.
I know. There's
watched
so
a
many
lot.
documentaries.
We've watched a lot.
All very good too. No, it was the Mind Polluters,
Mind
where they
Polluters,
were
okay.
talking about. I'm a nice person, and so I want to be an ally, right? So I join an ally group on Facebook. Go gay people, yay, kind of a thing. And then they said that when they were supporting them, then they had people start saying, well, don't you think you're gay? You're probably gay. Oh, you like to play softball? Oh, you're a lesbian. You know, like things like that. And then it was like, oh, you like to play softball and you're a tomboy. Maybe you're trans, you know? And so it's all of this very subtle, very kind of, but it all starts out of, I want to be supportive. I want to be inclusive. But it's mind-blowing, I guess, that there's this ideology out there that there are people who are truly walking around wanting to intentionally exclude people just based off of their demographics.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like a hard question to answer, so it's okay if you don't know the answer. But why do you think that schools are doing this? Because I know a lot of people are like don't really know why.
You mean SEL? Are you meaning like SEL or
like why do you think schools are really pushing this kind of agenda on kids?
Indoctrination.
Well, SEL in itself is like one of the things that they talk about is that it's supposed to make these children be better learners. It's supposed to make it be an easier child to teach. So, well, of course it's going to be an easier child to teach because you're teaching them to all think the same exact thing. Right. But that's really, and so I don't know that it is brought into districts with bad intention. I really think that
so.
That it comes in with good intention. You don't think so?
But
well, I mean,
do,
it depends on who's implementing it, right? Yeah. So I think maybe there are people at the top that it maybe has bad intention with, but I don't think the teachers who are in it are necessarily doing it.
Correct.
You know,
there are. I would agree 100%. There definitely are teachers that are not in it to be. You know, they truly think that it's the right thing and it's a good thing.
They do these like role playing things.
One of our school board members currently was a teacher in the district. I believe that she stopped with COVID. She was kind of like, and I'm done. But she says, upfront, honest, she used to be 100% on board with SEL. Because she honestly thought, in the way that it was taught to her, and the way that it was presented to her. But when I think of like the big picture, the castle, where does that come from? Oh, I think that's 100% ill intentions.
Sure, yes. I don't think that that's a good intention, and
Yes.
actually I could take you down that rabbit hole, but we don't have 5 hours to kill. So,
Yes.
but I could take you down that rabbit hole at some point.
Watch whose children are they if you
But
have
listen,
not.
and I can even go deeper into that because I've been unpacking this for a while. So, but I do think from the top, it's probably, not good. It's not good intention. I know it's not. But from the teacher aspect, that's why there's not a lot of pushback when it's initially being implemented, because really teachers are thinking they're helping. I really believe that. I really believe that they think that they're helping, and so when we talk about that, critical race theory is just embedded in this. They don't want to believe that, because critical race theory, people don't like the idea of critical race theory. Well, but there's people out there who they've made it their life's work to build off of critical race theory. Ibram X. Kendi, do you know who that is? So he is actually a very well-known author. He is the one who wrote Ibram X. Kendi. He's the author of How to Be Anti-Racist.
I was trying to think of the name
And
of the book. Sorry.
he actually declared that critical race theory was the foundation of his work.
Wow.
Okay, so he's widely accepted as this very wonderful, powerful activist who, he's on college campuses all the time. They had something with him at Ames Community College. His work explicitly calls for racial discrimination to redress past injustices.
Wow.
Okay? It does. It calls for that. And here's a quote from him. The only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination. The only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination.
Oxymoron.
And the only remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination. So that's actually from his How to Be an Anti-Racist.
Wow.
I believe
Oh,
that's where that's
gosh.
from. But it's just this idea of anti-racist, but when you're saying anti-racist, then you are taking a completely other demographic and shunning them for
Yes.
something. So now they're telling white children, well, we're going to be racist against you because you have white privilege, right?
Well, we have, so all of the schools have a diversity team.
DEI, diversity,
Um,
equity, and inclusion.
And
Makes me crazy.
they have, I wish I would have brought it, I should have thought of that. But they have 10, so they're at Greeley West, throw that one out there. They have 10 subgroups to their diversity. And I'm not going to be able to remember all of them, but there's like family, networking, there is equitable grading, there is the LGBTIA+, I believe is how those letters go. There's social and emotional redirection. So many, like, it's absolutely insane, and they truly do think that they're like doing the right thing by talking to them and trying to include all of this. But then when you take a step back and say, okay, that's great, you guys are implementing this in your everyday lives, but like, how is this preparing our children for the real world, right? Like, this stuff is not, this isn't how this is really going to go in the real world. But what they've done is, and kind of on to, like, when you had asked about why they're doing this, like, I immediately thought bigger picture, but
It exists.
It
Yes.
is to stop the independent thinking.
It is.
To stop that individuality, that somebody might have, that might possess, because they want to make it fair, for everybody. They talked about getting rid of the valedictorian and salutatorian.
Salutatorian.
Thanks.
Valedictorian, salutatorian. Yeah.
And because it's not fair, and I'm like,
But how is it not fair? They work their butt off to
you
get
want
there.
to push, yeah,
Right.
and if I know that
Yeah,
I'm-
merit just has gone.
Socialist economy.
yes, and that's
The big vehicle
That's-
that this is, and
that
that's the
is.
rabbit hole that would take me hours to get through. But
that is. Well, and they talk about getting our children ready.
someone
to
has to
graduate
be in that new society, right?
Right.
to graduate, you have to be career and college ready. That's what they call it. So you think, right, I'm somebody that can learn a trade, I'm somebody that can attend college. What you think. But it's not. It's actually, are you inclusive?
Mm-hmm.
Are you nice to people? That's what they're truly focusing on. So they're dumbing down our kids. It's proven. You know, people think you're crazy for saying that. You're not.
No.
We have currently, just a couple of stats, in 2020, the graduating class of 2020 for District 6, of the students that went on to college, 43% of them needed remedial classes. Oh wait, I'm sorry. You can't call them remedial anymore because that's not inclusive, and it might make somebody feel yucky inside that they have to go through that.
Well, so one of the other tools that they use, you know, in this neuroplasticity thing, they do these role-playing scenarios. And usually it's something around something's social injustice of some kind, right? And so they have kids act out these different scenarios, and they have to come up with the solution to it. But it has to be a socially acceptable solution, right? Mm-hmm. So that's desensitizing our kids,
Right.
because you're telling them how to think and feel and react and decide, and that's really the four components of this. Is they want to rewire how they think, but they're desensitizing them to not know how to think, because now they're going to be presented a situation and they're only going to know how to respond in that manner. So that's one of the other big things that they really do. I mean, it's in every grade, every subject.
Yep.
There's actually, out of South Carolina, there was a teacher's guide for a math class. And one of the things they said was, you need to come up with some feeling words, some ways to share your emotions. In math? Like, why aren't we just
I hate
teaching
math.
Like,
That's my emotion.
Like, why aren't we just
Yeah.
teaching math? So everything has to come at this different type of approach, right?
Yeah.
Castle's big push too is that this has to be tested. You have to assess this program. You have to know what's working and what's not working. Well, how do you do that? Well, you give them tests and exercises, and you watch them and you interview them. And when I say interview, I say that lightly because it's like an interrogation. They do these exercises in class where they'll get questions and they've got to answer them. And it might be something like, how do you feel about your changing body? How do you feel about your chest, your hair,
I'm just kind of getting
your
into
height,
the surveys.
right? Yeah. So they do a lot of surveys too, but we'll get there.
It's
but
more
these
like
are more
a
like
doctor
exercises, because these
questionnaire
would
than a
be
school questionnaire.
these would be more for like maybe like a middle schooler, right? Or they'll ask
Who does no middle schoolers
Or-
feels comfortable
well, exactly,
in their
because-
body,
because
boy or girl.
that is the most
Right.
awkward time of your life. I mean, you're just so
That's why we
strange.
laugh at it, right?
I know,
Like,
because listen, at 12 I was the weirdest little thing. I you know, God bless it, because I had to develop a personality. So so they do these things, and or they might ask something like, what is your best friend's name? And tell us, you know, what is one thing your friend does that makes you nervous? Because they're really starting to invade now in a very personal relationship. They'll ask, who's your mom? Well, tell us about your relationship with your mom this
Do you
morning.
know who else does things like that? Pedophiles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pedophiles, groomers. Yes,
the
100%.
groomers, 100%. And that's one of the other things too is, I mean, if I put on my tinfoil hat for a moment,
I think we're all
there
tinfoil hat
is-
wearers.
I mean, what better place, right?
What
I mean,
better place?
so we already know about groomers, right? Or pedophiles, sorry, about pedophiles is they're going to try to flock to children, right?
Yep.
So they're going to be teachers, they're going to be daycare, in churches, in, children's ministry, like all of that stuff, that is where,
Yeah.
that is where they're going to go.
Right.
So now if we get them into these situations, we start telling them that they should feel this way, we start love bombing them. I mean, this is, and whether it's, how many times do we hear about the teacher having an inappropriate relationship with the student?
Right. Oh, so much.
And when you hear about a lot of them, they're doing these things.
They are.
And the children we know their brains are not developed enough to understand it.
Yeah.
And so we're having to, look at it from that lens and also be concerned because, so we're telling them to feel this way, to treat people this way, and we won't get into this too much, but then we have sexually explicit books in the schools. There's a book called Beloved, and it actually has rape. It says the N word a lot.
I think like
it's something like 60 to
90
90 times. Yeah.
Holy cow.
And it has bestiality. It talks about having sexual intercourse with cows, and that's in a K through 8. Kindergarten through 8th grade.
So you're exposing kids to this.
We're telling them that they have to, kind of go by all these different things, and then we're saying that this stuff is okay, and it's just, opening the door. It may only be a trap for one student, but in my mind, that's one student too many.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like the parents are probably the greatest threat to their agenda.
Yes.
100%.
Trying to put that separation,
Yep.
like with the questions, with the panorama surveys, shaping them in a way where it's making them view their parents in a negative light,
Yes.
or the people that
Exactly.
walk in
And
their
then we
light.
have Safe to Tell.
Right.
So that is a number that you can text or call anonymously and make a report about anything. Well, who could you report with? I mean, if I'm concerned about my friend Amber, maybe she's suicidal, I'm going to go talk to my mom.
Right.
Actually, that happened to me when I was in high school.
Yeah.
I had a friend and I was like, Mom, this isn't a good situation. But this is creating an environment where they can do that without getting any adults involved. And that is very, very scary.
Well, it's that whole community aspect, right? So they really want parents involved in teaching this SEL at home or really being involved in it. They have resources for you to take home, to learn this at home, because they wouldn't want you to undo all of their hard work.
Well, and it reinforces.
In the evening and weekends and school breaks. Castle's essentially replacing parents with the schools. And the schools are totally cool with it. I mean, think about
they just see dollar signs.
They do see dollar signs because they get a lot of funding for this. I mean, it was built into some acts that have been passed, but they're even feeding our kids 2 meals a day now, right? Because Colorado passed breakfast and lunch, so now we have breakfast and lunch, and they've even thrown out dinner. I've heard it discussed.
In District 6, actually the secretary of somebody for the United States, I can't remember.
Somebody said.
Came to recognize District 6. So District 6 was we have mill levy override, which is basically a mill levy is the amount that is determined of how much of your property taxes can go to the schools. But then if you vote on a mill levy override, it allows them to increase that so they can get more funding. And part of that is they have this situation with state funding. So depending on enrollment, there's so many different factors. But the state may not give you as much money as what you actually need, and so what's in for the mill levy, maybe between the two, that's not enough, and so we need to dump in even more money. So we voted. The board voted in August. Yes, last August, to actually continue. So every other school district in the state of Colorado stopped getting COVID money to feed the children. All of them got COVID money to feed children. Most of them stopped at the end of the school year last year, so last May. But District 6 as the board voted to use mill levy override money to continue this. And everybody qualifies for it. You get free breakfast, you get free lunch, you get an afternoon snack, and sometimes you can get dinner depending. The dinner one is very much dependent upon what your home situation is, and they actually do look at it more as an individual case. But once you do that,
it opens the door for more, right?
Absolutely.
So one of the other things that they've talked about doing is extending school hours. You've probably heard that. And then there's even been some debate about summer break and how kids like fall behind because of it. And so there's been talks about going full year round. And honestly, I mean, if
And
you're looking
longer
at this,
school days?
well, why they want your kids longer? Because
Well,
they have to continually be
one of the
feeding
things
them
that
this stuff.
they
Oh my
encountered
gosh.
in District 6 was last year. So the teachers union and the school district always have negotiations every year, and they talk about like negotiation, your price and all that stuff. And last year, I guess the teachers had said something along the lines of, we need more breaks, that we are getting burnt out because we're in school too much. And they wanted to change the calendar from the traditional, we start the second week of August and we're usually out the second to third week of May, kind of depending on how it all falls. And they looked at 4 different ones, and it was so interesting to see because there were teachers and parents who were really getting involved and saying, we don't like this. One of them was the extended calendar, which would basically give the children a spring break every month. You'd get a week off every month, starting in October, starting in the end of September. Would be the first one, and it's kind of like, you guys have barely been in school for
a minute,
month and
you've
a
been in school
half,
for a minute.
and you already need a whole week off. But one of the perks that they did say to it was that they would be able to, everybody goes to Disney World for spring break, or those types of things. It would be off cycle so that they could go, but it was going to, that schedule was going to only give them a 5-week summer. And it was really interesting to see teachers and parents alike kind of standing up and saying, we don't want to do this. We don't. And they didn't want to extend the school day at all as well to try to make up for more, because you have to be in person
for so many hours,
Yeah.
like cumulative hours.
So they were definitely, trying to bypass that. But
yeah, I mean,
they were concerned about if we would we be able to, so we get federal money to continue feeding the kids even in the summertime. And so, they were worried about losing out on that money, and how can they take care of everybody.
It's always the money. It always comes back to that. But since they're just trying to replace parents. I mean,
Yes.
and that's really the idea. I mean, they're building medical facilities on campuses, and they do it under the guise of, it's so convenient. It's right here, and you don't even have to take them. We'll take them. We'll take them to the dentist too.
Yeah.
We'll go get their jabs.
We'll just
for
raise
you.
them for you.
Yeah. But that's essentially what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
So they put in this programming into our kids, and they want to constantly be feeding it to them. I mean, because it only works if you're constantly feeding it to them, right? If they go home and become unbrainwashed, I don't know how you say it. They undo the work. Then they have to kind of start all over. So when they're putting it in, they're doing these things. They're doing these tests. They're accumulating all of this information, and then it has to be analyzed. Well, do you think it's the school that's analyzing it? No, they're working with third-party health, mental health management companies, right? So you're like, well, that's kind of sketchy. Well, then they're looking at it, and then they're giving the school some feedback saying, well, these are the interventions that you need to do. So they're collecting this info, selling the info, and then psychologically using it against your children.
Right.
Because as we heard, that Castle said it's going to change, right? It's really going to, it really is all moving parts, because the system itself, all of these tests really determine where the program is going to go.
Right.
So they use something called a multi-tiered system of support, and it's essentially it's like a dashboard that kind of comes in, and you might have different companies that work with you, but you get the survey information, or these quizzes, or these interrogations, as you might call them, and they have to put it all somewhere. So it goes to to a system. And this is where you can see the different interventions, right? So you can see, okay, we've given it to all of the kids. Now, which one of those needs a little bit more? Because these kids have all conformed. It's great.
Right.
But we've got some that are like in the middle,
Yeah.
and they might need just a little bit more.
Right.
Okay, so they're gonna go ahead and do the little bit more for those kids. And then there's this really tough group, those Christian kids, right? Because they're really hard, so we really got to give them more. So it's group, then it's subgroup, and then it's individualized,
Right.
really, in how they do these interventions, and it really, it's scary when you think about it.
Right.
It
yeah,
really
and
is
when
scary.
the Christian kids aren't conforming, let's
Right.
make their lives
And really, I mean,
really
that's
hard.
they've done the study on it. It is
Yeah.
the kids who have morals
Mm-hmm.
that have been instilled in them through Judeo-Christian values.
And their identity is rooted in Christ, because it's an
Yes.
identity
Yes.
crisis. Is
That's
how
what
they're
this
getting
is,
these
because
names.
they want
Yes.
to take the identity and have this
Mhm.
group think type of mentality, this
Mhm.
socialist
Absolutely.
idea.
Well, and I think it's interesting too, how it kind of all goes in with that is, so in the 2021-2022 school year, the District 6 implemented student IDs, but they have RFID tracking chips embedded inside of them. Like you know, the ones that you get in your credit card, but you know how you can see it on your credit card. These were in between. We only found them, somebody somewhere, but turned on a flashlight and held it underneath the student ID, and it has a red kind of a glow that comes up, and you can see it's just a little tiny chip in there. And so when I found that, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I did not consent.
Back the truck up.
I
Hold
did
the phone.
not
Right.
consent to this.
Mhm.
When did I
Yeah.
consent to
Mhm.
this? When did you tell me? And they couldn't figure it out. The principal didn't even know. And he's a principal and a parent of district students. And he was like, what are you talking about? You know, and then he found it and he was like, oh, that's kind of weird. Well, so I started looking into it more, and the chips or the IDs come from a company that has a partnership with a group that the Department of Education, so U.S. Department of Education funds, called Positive Behavioral Innovations Systems. And it is a 3-tier support system on these kids. And what it basically is going to do, because as they were explaining it to us, they said, as they were talking about their IDs, not explaining any of the RFID, because they won't talk about any of that with me. They'd said, we are now going to be able to track the children from one building to the next. And that's just a crazy statement all in all.
Mm-hmm.
But what it sounds like, what their meaning is, when you go from elementary school to a new middle school, right? This ID, this chip, all of this stuff is collecting data on you that will then be given to your middle school, so they'll know about you and they can learn about you. There's no clean slates. And so there's 3 tiers. Everybody starts out in the bottom one, and that's, you know, and on the website for Positive Behavioral Innovation Systems, or PBIS, it does say social emotional learning. And it's so, okay, everybody's in the bottom tier, everybody's doing good, but then if you're, you know, a problem child, a Christian, we don't know exactly what, you're going to get moved up into the next one.
We're going to have to do
they're
a little bit more for you.
Yeah, so then you're going to have to do a
my
little bit more,
gosh.
and then you're going to move up
See
into
how
the
it
top
fits?
tier if you're truly a problem child. So like the kid that just shot up Denver East, I'm not sure if they have this there. I would assume, because it's a Denver school and
Yeah.
we know Denver, but he would have been in the top tier because he
Of interventions.
because he needed a he was on the safety plan to make it safe for him, for the other kids,
For him to be there.
at school.
Mhm.
But that would have all been in there. And say he transferred to another school inside the Denver school district, it would have gone with him, and they would have all known that these were steps that needed to be done with him. Which in this situation, the Denver East situation, I can see the benefits to it.
Yeah, because this one was, you know, a behavioral thing that is putting other people at risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are some of these things that are just because they just aren't going to budge on their belief system, right?
Last year at one of the high schools in Greeley, they had Gay Pride Week. And this one kid, he was so offended by that because he was like, I don't get a straight week. Like, what are you talking about? This is so crazy. Mm-hmm. And so he went home and he made a shirt that said, "Stop grooming me," and had the American flag on there. Well, he then had like a target on his head because he spoke out against the agenda. His mom has a target on her head because she stood beside him. And I mean, they were getting him with the craziest stuff. They tried to say he stole a hand weight. Yeah, because he put his hand down by his side and then picked it back up and put it on the counter. And they said he tried to steal it.
Oh my
A
word.
hand weight?
A hand weight. Like,
Ooh.
So they're compiling all of this information, right? And you sit here and you wonder, like, who's doing it though in the school? And essentially, it's teachers who don't have this kind of training, but they're doing these mental health type exercises with our kids.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, it should be illegal, and I mean, I think technically it is, because if they're practicing mental health medicine or medical things without a license and without it being in a controlled environment, it's illegal. So
Yes.
not only should they stop doing it, but they should also probably be in prison for doing it.
Right.
I mean,
sure.
but I don't think that they all really know exactly what it is they're doing.
Yeah.
But these kids are doing these tests, you know, and when we were talking about, like, tell me about your mom, I think of things like that. Like, my kid and I, we go rounds in the morning.
oh yeah.
Because she is a turd sometimes.
Yeah.
And so we go rounds, and I think, you know, when she gets to school, oh man, if someone asked her immediately about me, she'd be like, "Mama," you know,
You're
this
right.
dramatic fashion about how horrible I am because I made her get dressed, and I can't believe that I told her, you know,
That
you
she had
know,
to brush her hair.
I had
or
to brush her
something.
hair, you know, something ridiculous, but
Right.
you know, to her that was a big deal.
Right.
So they're taking things.
Well, and they're not
Really?
asking these kids, what's the flip side?
Yeah, what's
What?
my mom said
what
if I
else?
didn't get in the car,
Yeah.
she was gonna kick me into next week.
Yeah.
Well, I always tell her that. That doesn't mean I'm actually going to kick her in next week because you can't physically do that. But you know, those are those things that are happening, and it's just, it's really, I mean, it's just so scary when you think about it, because
Right.
they're learning everything about your kid, and
And they're kind of
it
getting
is being sold, and it cannot be anonymous. There's no way that this is anonymous,
No.
because how would they know which kids need to be targeted if it's
Right.
anonymous?
So one of
Don't
the
give me that
So
crap.
how do they know that with the chips? Like, what do the chips do?
Well, I'm assuming. I mean, if it's like another microchip, if it's another, you know, RFID chip, those contain information. So, like when it's a credit card,
Yeah.
it's all of your credit card information, your name,
Yeah.
your address, your, you know, all of your
Right.
contact stuff.
So what is coming up? We don't know. They won't answer me.
Really?
I've asked them multiple times. I've suggested. I've encouraged every way that I possibly could that they notify the parents.
And we're
When
not.
are you going to?
Oh,
Why
the
they
parents still
they
Nope,
still to
still
this
have
day
not.
have not notified. If anybody knows, it's probably because of me.
right.
And it's alarming that they're not. That's what I keep saying to
And
them.
is
If
this
there's
in all schools? You would say all public schools?
You know, we know of a couple of districts in Colorado for sure, just because we know the partnerships that they're doing, and we've seen the schools that they kind of boast about.
I'm sorry, Boulder Valley has it. So I did a Colorado Open Records Act against them because they weren't giving us any information. And I actually work for a general contractor. And so I have a lot of experience with reading quotes. And so I Colorado Open Record Act, the quote from the company that they got them from. And on there, they had sample IDs, and they had 2 districts on there, Boulder Valley, which is, there's absolutely no shock there.
Right?
right.
But also Johnstown,
Wow.
the Johnstown Milliken district has them.
Which is
They-
so not like
They actually implemented them in the fall of 2020 because it was supposed to help them understand cohorts and, you know, staying in the right groups.
Well,
and,
they sold
and
it.
all of
They
that.
sold it to them under the you know,
Yep.
under the right thing for
But
them
they
to
didn't
get
even
it.
ask the parents. They didn't even tell the
No,
parents.
the
They're
parents
not.
there didn't even know either.
They're not.
Wow.
I mean, when they're doing these tests on our kids, they're not telling us about that either.
Right.
I mean, they say they are. They say they're sending things out, but they're not.
Well,
right.
and,
I sent you
you
an
know,
email that you didn't.
An
see.
example of some of these questions that they're asking the kids. So our district sent an email one way for the fall panorama survey, and then sent it a totally different way for the winter.
And Panorama is one of those multi-tiered systems
Yes.
of support. So something you have to utilize to make your SEL work, right?
And so I was able to opt my daughter out of the one in the fall. I was like, no. I told her, don't you ever take any surveys. If they ever ask you to take a survey, tell them no. And if they have a problem, you call me. I will Dukes of Hazzard up the front lawn any minute, kind of a thing. Well, what ended up happening was there was a winter one. My daughter was told that she had to do it. It is for a grade, which is explicitly against what the script is that the teachers are given. They're given a script on how to administer these panorama surveys. And so
A survey is being graded.
so they say it's because it's in homeroom, and in homeroom you have to participate.
Participation.
And so there's this. And so my daughter, who has struggled academically, was never going to, I mean, she's not going to not do something and get a bad grade. I mean, she is terrified of that.
Right.
And so she took it against my will. But she did take screenshots of the questions. So these are some of the questions. My teacher respects my cultural background. It's kind of a weird question. My teacher respects me as an individual. Our classroom materials, books, articles, videos, art, music, posters, etc., reflect my cultural background. How often do you have classes with students from different racial, ethnic, or cultural backgrounds? How often do you spend time at school with students from different races, ethnicities, or cultures? How often do teachers encourage you to learn about people from different races, ethnicities, or cultures? And there's a couple more, but you can kind of see where it's going. Well, when I had said that, I'd questioned the curriculum at the beginning of the year, one of the things that I was concerned about was during the day when my daughter was in class, I got a message from her that says, "I'm gilded." And I was like, I don't think you're saying what you think. Like, I don't think you know what's going on. Like, that's a weird statement, I guess. And she said, "No, that's the color of my skin." I said, "What do you mean? What are you talking about? What is going on?" And she said, "We're on the Home Depot website looking at paint colors so that we can see what color closely relates to our skin tone. So they can know what it's called." And I was like, what class is this?
Was it math?
Was it math?
She said it was English.
I'm just saying.
Wow.
'Cause
And I was like,
that wouldn't shock me.
I was like, what is going on? So then, she kind of starts telling me some more. Well, anyways, they were reading an essay, excerpt from an essay that was written by a black woman. And she was talking about how she was in a book club, and they had to bring a appetizer, an hors d'oeuvre, that reflects, or is a reflection of their ethnicity. And this girl was stumped. Because she was a mix, a beautiful mix. I can't remember all the different ethnicities, but there was Native American, there was Scottish, there was African, all of multiple, just super diverse. Not what you would see. Something that totally exemplifies the melting pot that America is and how beautiful it is.
Absolutely.
And so she's talking about, I don't know what to pick. Well, I mean, if I was asked to do one, I don't know if I would know what to pick off the top of my head either. And she talks about how, generationally, we aren't passing down recipes. You're not in the, maybe in the kitchen learning, from your grandma or old recipes. We're not doing that as much anymore, right? I use Pinterest for recipes. But she chooses to identify as just plain black. And she talks about the hardship of hailing a cab in Manhattan when you're black. Like, how does this have anything to do with hors d'oeuvres? Come on, lady. She then starts to talk about how her family really enjoys watermelon. But her mom bought a melon baller and some fancy crystal dishes so they could scoop the watermelon and put it in the dishes so that the white people who were staring in the window judging racially or in racial judgment wouldn't think that it was watermelon but would think that it was sherbet instead. And it just, there's so many weird things. She starts talking about, like, describing the watermelon, and she's like, it almost sounds like she's describing boobs. It's very uncomfortable. Like, is this even... And she's, like, talking about, like, the pink mounds and stuff, and I'm like, this is weird. So I was very upset. Like, what does that even mean? I've been white my entire life, and I've never
looked in someone's window. And been like, oh my gosh.
Definitely not to see what
they're
they were
eating tacos.
eating.
I can't believe they're eating tacos.
And so this was, right? And then the teacher had showed them a video of a guy who was talking about looking at the paint section. The teacher went on to say that in some capacity, she is envious, a white teacher, was envious of the black community for the community that they have with each other or something along those lines. And I was just like, that's what you chose to talk about? Like, this is mind-blowing. So, of course, I shoot off an email to all of the appropriate administrators who happen to all be white. And I said, I'm going to ask you this. As a white person, how many times in your life have you looked through somebody's window to see what they were eating?
Yeah.
I'm going to guess none, because that's weird. Like, that's not normal.
Be considered like a peeping Tom
Right?
or something. Like, go to the
Well, I'm really curious
jail.
what white food is.
But these, right?
Right.
But these people...
Yeah, what is white food?
They're teaching these kids this, and then the kids are like, oh my gosh, I'm going to grow up and white people are going to be looking through my living room window. Like, no.
Casseroles.
Casseroles.
Tuna casserole.
Potato salad. And so it just, it shows how they're teaching them the social and emotional learning of, life's hard for black people. They're at a disadvantage. They can't even
eat
hail a cab. I want to know how this mom got the watermelon. Where did you get it from? Did you stick it under your shirt at the store?
like someone saw you buy it.
Yeah. Oh my god.
I assume.
Yeah, hopefully. And then, one of the other things that we had a major issue with, and it just shows kind of how easy they just kind of slip it in there. The U.S. history teacher was saying that, so we've all heard, I believe, I'm assuming, Thomas Jefferson was racist. Did you guys know that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson was racist, but he's also a rapist.
Oh, wow.
I asked for the proof. Like, where
That's
did
a
you
new
find
one.
this
Yeah, where
at?
did you find this at?
But there's claims that he had a child with one of his slaves. It is known he was a slave owner, but that he had a child with one of his slaves. That's actually not been proven.
Right.
But if he had, then he forced her because he was the master and she was the slave. So therefore, he's a rapist. And I actually was just kind of saying it to someone that I knew would probably agree with that craziness. And I was like, did you know that Thomas Jefferson's a rapist? And she's like, well, yeah, I think everybody knows that. And I said, I don't think that that's true.
Yeah.
She goes, well, if he wasn't, the people he was around were. Wow.
Ben Franklin.
Could you
He's all
imagine?
old.
Could you imagine if we'd said that, about Will Smith? Like, well,
Yeah.
he's in Hollywood with all, he must be.
He must be one of those.
Yeah.
She
Wow.
also, they were also taught that separation of church and state means that you don't have to love God and you won't be arrested for it. So if you just kind of see how the stuff is being implemented,
Yeah.
and just these little cracks. If my daughter didn't have us at home to have already taught her a lot of this stuff, but then for her to come to and say, I mean, she's even come to me and said, like, what do you think of John F. Kennedy? He's a Democrat. And I'm like, he was a good person. Like, he wasn't an extremist. He was probably what we would call a middle road now, more than a Democrat.
Yeah.
But it just opens the door. I mean, even as a child of the 90s, I feel really old saying that.
Yeah, because y'all were born in the 90s.
We were taught, or I guess I shouldn't say
Oh,
taught,
more than the 90s.
but we were
And we were like in middle school.
we were informed that separation of church and state was to keep this church out of public schools.
Yes.
Instead, it's to
That's
keep
not what
the
it was.
government
Out of
out of the
church.
church.
That's what I was taught too. And I went to a private school. I
Yeah.
went to a private school and I went to like pretty good schools, right?
Yeah.
And I was taught those things.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm talking like I was 37,
yeah.
35, something like that, 36. When I actually found out the truth, I was like,
Yeah.
huh, interesting.
Right.
Mine was just the deep dive that I did with constitutional stuff, but
Yeah.
I mean, I was like
But if we have this,
not my age now, but several years ago.
if we have this mentality of, separation of church and state is either so you don't have to love God and you won't be arrested, or to keep God out of public schools. But we just found out that one of the brand new high schools in Greeley has a foot washing station for during Ramadan.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Do they have a Bible reading station?
And exactly.
Do you want to be the Bible reading
Well,
station?
I'm
where you go there and
actually
start
going
reading
to.
it and
I'm
be
going
the
to
station?
inquire what entrees are going to be offered next Friday, so I
Yeah,
can be
so
like,
we were-
is
that
this
was-
meatless?
That was my question. So, okay. So they're accommodating.
But
Ramadan.
we're
But what
having
about, we're in Lent right now. So
Yeah.
where are my Catholics at? What are they eating on Fridays?
Right.
Are they
And-
giving you fish?
Yeah.
Are they giving you a meatless option?
Right.
Or is salad, which is available every single day, the only option?
Right. And same with like Jewish holidays.
Yeah. Are they feeding you pulled pork that day?
Yeah, right?
Right. Like I'm very offended.
You know, those are really things to consider though in this,
But
right?
this is like a subtle social emotional learning of you must accommodate the Muslims, but you can kick the Christians to
Yeah.
the curb. They're not important. They're a problem.
Right.
But the Muslims are also not getting as involved. If we could wake up because we have a large Muslim
We do.
community in Greeley.
We do.
Really?
Yeah. So back in 2007, immigration raided JBS, the meatpacking plant, and so they needed like a lot of workers were deported, and so they needed to figure out quick how to staff that plant, and so they have a plant in Somalia, and so they went there and said, we will pay for you to move to America to go work at this meat. So they paid their entire move here, got them situated with housing and all of this stuff. So we do have a very large Muslim community. But how do we justify, saying it's okay to treat one way or one another way? It's not. And to say that, okay, this is open for students that need to wash their feet,
Right.
Well, I'm gonna wash them all like the disciples. I'm gonna go over there and wash
Yeah.
feet.
Oh yeah. There you go.
Well, I honestly thought
Just
about
line 'em
saying
up.
something about that. So,
Yeah.
will we be able to come in on Thursday evening before Good Friday
Yeah,
so
can
that
we
we
wash the
can
feet?
wash the
Yeah.
feet? Because
Right.
that's also important to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because really, like, if they're gonna say no religion is allowed in schools, then it needs to be no religion. And
Right.
I don't agree with that.
Right.
I wear my faith on my sleeve, like I'm proud, and
Well, but if you look at it too, though,
but they are teaching.
Christianity is what is going to stop and keep them
Correct.
from this crazy critical race, right? Because
Yeah.
your identity is in Christ and should only be in Christ. The social emotional learning. I mean, oh man, I can't tell you how many times we hear about the Good Samaritan and how, like, you know, that's social emotional learning. That's why he did that, and it's like, no.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's great to be a good Samaritan. Everybody should strive to be a good Samaritan, right?
Like, you should just be a good human.
But
Yeah.
if you're not going to also, but you're not hurting anybody, it's probably not the end of the world either.
Yeah.
And so, you know, should we say, like, yes, you should go out and help others that you see that are, you know, need help, but also it's not required. And
like,
that's where
it's
they're,
on you.
yes,
If you
that's
do
more
that,
of it.
right? It's on you. It's a heart thing, and it's
Yeah.
if really, like, for me, if God's leading me to do it, I'm gonna listen, right?
Right.
Well, so one of the big things social emotional learning really, like, pushes and really pushes is compromise. They actually kind of look at that as one of their biggest, like, virtues, right? Like, if you can compromise, you are, like, a very well-rounded, you know, you are a really good person if you can compromise. So then I think about that, and I'm like, okay, compromise isn't always bad, because, like, we all have to do it, right? Like, if you're in a relationship, if you're married, like, I can't hog the TV all the time, even though I want to. Like, I have to compromise and let my husband watch his stupid car shows sometimes. Like, that's just how this goes. But I think about, if you're constantly compromising is really to take something less than you had anticipated, right? So someone's bringing in their value or their idea or their belief, and you're bringing in yours. And so now you have to come to this middle ground belief. So have you lost your belief? Because you've basically created an entirely new belief.
Right.
And there's these things in life you should never compromise on.
Yeah, morals.
Faith, family. I will never, ever, ever compromise on my faith or my freedom.
Right.
Or my family.
Right.
And I certainly don't want my daughter compromising either, because I don't
Right.
want her to compromise, one, who she is, her faith. What about when it comes to, like, her purity?
Right.
Like, this just changes how things are approached, right?
Look at how that entire culture has changed. How we went from, I even if you look at, like, the movie Grease, right? Like, how, like, taboo kind of some of that, the sexualness of it is, to, you know, hot girl summer for little girls, and it's like, no, you probably shouldn't be. But Christianity gets in the way of that, right?
Yeah,
it stops that sexuality.
Stops the sexualization of children.
It's whether it's, you know, straight sexuality or homosexual sexuality, you know, whatever it is, the Christian faith gets in between and says, no, don't do this, stop this, you shouldn't live this life. I mean, and that's what it is. I can't help but say that this is Satan at the core of all of it. Kill, steal, and destroy is really what this really is.
Right, fighting powers and
It's really breaking down the person.
Yep.
It's really taking them from being a person who can think and feel on their own, right? You should be able to think and feel. Like, I'm a big proponent of the First Amendment. I think you all know that. And so I'm going to fight for your right to be as stupid as you want to be.
I may not agree with you, but
I am probably not going to agree with you,
Right.
but I'm going to fight for your right to be stupid. And I'm going to fight for your right to say something stupid. And I'm going to fight for your right to believe what you want to believe.
Yeah.
it's wrong, but
It's wrong, and you're not right, because but I'm still going to fight for you. And so it really is taking that away, because you're not allowing them to free think. You're not allowing them to analyze a situation with a critical eye, and not to be confused with critical theory.
Right.
A critical eye where you really are able to process that information and develop your own sense of
Self and
I mean, there's really, like, a lot of components that come into that, right? I mean,
finding
even
out-
your self-esteem can be
Right.
developed in in going through the thought process and deciding things and then having successes and failures, right? That's how you develop as a person.
Yeah.
So when you take all of that away,
Yeah.
and you say everything has to be an equal playing field, and you have to think this way, and feel this way, and respond this way, and decide this way,
Right.
you're just making a bunch of yes men
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bunch of little robots.
who do not know how to function. And
Yeah.
I truly, we've talked about it. I said, we have people who cannot function in life. They can't even call and make their own doctor's appointment.
Yeah.
They don't know how.
Yeah.
If they can't
you-
text it, they have no idea how to do it.
We
Yeah.
talk about, all these people that are trying to, I say, steal our children from us, but our doctors are all with the UC Health, and so we have the app, right? Because
The app. Everything's the app.
and
Yeah.
I started to notice shortly after my daughter turned 14 that I couldn't see the same stuff that I could for myself or for my youngest son. Like,
Oh.
it was really weird. I can't, see what medications she's on. I can't see test results anymore. I could message them, but it's really limited. And so I was like, something's wrong with my app. And they're like, no, she turned 14. You don't get access to that anymore.
Like,
turned 14,
I'm still
not
paying for
18.
everything. She's living in
And
my
I
house.
said, who do you think is going to schedule this appointment?
Yeah.
Who do you think is going to drive her to
Yeah.
the appointment? Who do you think's going to
Well,
remember
but she-
that there's an appointment?
This is where the school
She's
wants to
14,
intervene.
not 18.
Exactly.
But this is where the school wants to intervene, right? They want to be able to take your
Can the
child
school
to
see
the
it?
doctor. You wonder.
Well,
so
they suggested to me that for her to create her own account, and then if she wanted to give me access to it, then she could. I said, then we won't do it. I'm not doing this. No.
And so, when we're talking just a little bit about that, we do have a new mental health bill that's being, I don't remember when it's being argued.
Next week?
I feel very confident that it's next week because I'm supposed to go there and
Yeah,
anyway.
I think so.
So, but really what it does is it takes away parental rights and parental, the ability for a parent to help their child decide what is right. Instead, it allows them at the age of 12, and I think about me at 12, I was a hot mess of braces and weirdness, and you couldn't have gotten me to make a good decision to
Isn't
save
it
your life.
12 and younger?
It's 12 and older.
Because it's already been in place for
Well, so
older, or
so,
to some
so
extent.
12 is the age essentially that they can consent on their own, right? So if they're 12 and under, the parent can opt them out.
Okay,
done deal.
that's right.
Okay, if they're 12 and under, they can opt them out. If they're 12 and older, even if the parent opts them out, they can opt themselves back in.
Wow.
2, and this mental health bill is an assessment. So it's probably going to go along the same lines of the social emotional learning. I mean, we already know that that's just a big mental health thing anyway. But they're going to do an annual mental health assessment on every child, and it's done by what they call it, a qualified third party, but they don't specify really that qualified third party.
Because it probably doesn't exist yet.
Well, that's just it. They're going to have to build all kinds of things with this. So this qualified third party, and they're going to assess your children, and it's probably not going to be highly in-depth, right? It's not going to be like psychotherapy. It's probably going to be in the form of a panorama survey or some kind of questionnaire that your kid is going to fill out in a classroom. And at this point, they're going to be able to make a mental health assessment on your child. So I think about this, and I'm thinking someone who's probably undertrained, underqualified, right? Maybe someone who has lesser degrees than Stacy even is going to be able to make decisions on my child, something that may stick with them forever. Like, what if they say they're bipolar, or that they have anorexia, or that they have generalized anxiety disorder? Those things stay with you, right?
Oh,
So those come into play later in life. So what if they're 10 and they're being told that they have anxiety or that they have bipolar disorder, and then at 18, 21 now, they want to go buy a firearm. But now is the red flag law going to come into effect? I mean, is that, because those things stay with you. Once it's on you, it's really hard if you don't have the right resources to get that off of you.
Well,
I mean, it
another-
really is.
Another thing, too, is continuing on with the doctor's situation. So once the children turn 14, then the doctors will ask you to step out of the room so that they can talk to your child about mental health, sex, drugs.
Yeah, asking
things
your
that the
14-year-old daughter if
parents-
she needs to be on birth control.
Yes, things that the parents should have an idea of. If my child is suicidal, I should probably be the
If my
very
child is on a
first call.
medication, I should
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and which is why they've taken that away. So now I can't read her appointment summary, because if they talked about her wanting to get on the pill, it would be on there, and they don't want me to know.
And none of those things should be hidden from parents. So all of this takes parents out of the equation, right? In fact, so I was doing, a little bit more digging because I needed to do more digging, but I did more digging because, and then I just
You like to dig.
so I started reading some articles that have been put out by some of these partners of castles, and one of them had an article in education. Are parents really the best? Oh, how did it go? Are parents really the best solution, or do parents really know best? Do parents really know best? Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Because we know our kids better than anybody else.
Yeah.
Because one, like my daughter lived in me, so I know her.
Mm-hmm.
I
The
can tell you when she's up to something. I can tell you, I know her.
Well, the only way you could communicate with your child for at least 2 years was by their, facial expressions or the
Right.
sounds of their cries or whatever. Don't tell me. I mean, my daughter will be like,
And you're like,
and I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, nothing. I'm like, girlfriend, that is the only way that we were able to communicate. Nobody knows your facial expressions better than I do. What's wrong? Well, I just don't like it. Okay,
Yeah.
exactly. Something
Exactly.
was wrong. But yeah,
Right.
they want to undermine the parent. They want to, I think that's the whole goal of social emotional learning, critical race theory, all of this is to undermine the parent. The parent is not capable. When I had reached out to the district to complain about the January 6th email, I said, first of all, it is not the school's responsibility to tell me how to talk to my children about social events that are going on. It's not. It's not your job. Okay? If I needed help, I'll reach out to you. But see, that's the problem is that there was one time when I needed help. I was on the phone sobbing my eyes out like, oh, please help me with my kid. I don't know what to do. And they reported me to social services. Yeah. Reported me to social services. Social services called me and they said, hi, we got a report that you are allowing your daughter to live in filth, like spiders and mice. You're not taking her to the doctors like she's supposed to go. And we're concerned for her safety. Well, my daughter's a hoarder, which is why I was talking to that lady, because my kid does not care if her room is... In fact, I actually had to use her full-length mirror today. I had gotten a new outfit, and I have to put on blinders when I walk in there because her room is awful. But it was allowing mice, and she didn't care that there was spiders because she'd never cleaned her room to dust and get rid of cobwebs. She didn't, things like that. I had surgery on my right knee, and I actually could not bend my knee more than 30 degrees. So maybe that much. You can't drive like that. So I couldn't take her down to Denver to see her urologist because I could not drive. It was just something like that. And the school was definitely trying to kind of get in there to undermine me, to help my child that didn't need help at all. So wait a minute. Why would we reach out to you?
Right.
Now there's a fear, if I needed help ever again with my kids, I would never, ever, ever, ever reach out to the district ever again. Ever.
Right.
And so, it's creating this barrier where they think they need to replace the parents, and then there are parents who are like, well, they are way more educated than me. I guess they know better than what I do.
Yes.
I think...
oh, it sure would be convenient if they would take my kid to the dentist for me.
Statistically, 70% of our students out of 22,000 are below poverty line. And so we are definitely a very low income school. And so, you know, it might be a single parent household. Your mom might have, if you live with your mom, but your parent, I guess, I'll be inclusive, may have to work multiple jobs or can't get you to the doctor, can't get you to the dentist, and so they're hoping kind of for that. When I was a single mom before I started to finish any college, I might have believed the teachers more than me because this is what they went to school for. They would know, right? They just, we have also this ideology that they just want what's best for our kids. Well, that's not always the truth.
Yeah.
So sometimes they want what's best for them.
Yeah.
That's true. So kind of final thoughts to wrap everything up. What are some action items that people can do to either get involved or speak out against this? Or from your experience, what's been effective?
I feel like one of the first things, which might seem kind of weird, is to go to your parent-teacher conferences. You truly do need to meet and know your children's teachers, to kind of understand, where they're at. I think that it helps you, kind of know their ideologies as well. I mean, if you walk in, right, and they have a pronouns pin on, well, then I'm already going to be kind of like, okay, so maybe kind of keep an eye out on that one, or, something. And not because they do or do not identify with their God-given pronoun, but more so because they may think that they're doing it to be inclusive, and that's where the slippery slope starts to happen. To be involved in your child's school work, understand what they're learning, understand what they're talking about in class.
When they send back the work that's graded, look through it.
Yeah.
Read it. See open a textbook. Look inside of it.
The private school that my son goes to started a program, and it's called Frenzy.
Oh Lord!
It's
I should have bet that meeting as quick as I could.
FRIENDZY. Okay, and I was like, "What is this?" Like immediately.
And I actually did reach out to Stacey. I was like, "Girlfriend, what do you know about this?"
And I had another mom reach out to me and said, "Did you see that?" I was like, "Oh man, I thought
because it is under social emotional learning.
Yeah.
But not all social emotional learnings are created equal. This one is on a biblical basis, and it really does approach it everything from scripture and really. I had a lot because the first thing I heard that they have time that you get to go meet with the administrators, and I was there, and I was like,
because so many parents were like, "What? No."
I need to know what is happening. So really, that definitely knowing what's going on, be present in the classroom.
Yeah.
And if they aren't letting you be in the classroom, find out why.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, why can't I be here?
Right.
Because listen, I know you only have so many paras, and I know you only have so many aides that come in here.
You can always use help.
You can always use help.
If anything I learned from my school education, my public school education, was there was never enough help, teachers, subs, any of that stuff.
I can probably come and at least file paperwork for you, or
great.
I can wipe down tables. So be present in the classroom and find out if they won't let you, why they're not letting you. And then I would say go to school board meetings. Go to the work sessions. Be there. It's not always feasible to be at every single one of them, and I get that because people do have jobs and work and things, but send somebody, a trusted friend or a representative or a grandparent, somebody who can go in your place if you can't be there.
Or listen
online or watch it back. Now you won't get to do the work session that way, but you can do the meeting itself. And listen.
In District 6 you can.
Not all of them can you do that. But not all of them can you do that. So I'm saying as a general rule. But really listen back and listen for the language that they're using. Are they using those type of inclusive language? Are they using, when they touch on updates, like listen for it. And then, and there's involvement, at the community level. There are groups out there who are working together to fight back on this. Parents Defending Education, Moms for Liberty,
Colorado Parents.
Purple for Parents.
What's CPAN? Colorado Parents Advocacy Network.
Oh yeah. So there are groups out there, and they're mobilizing, and they're figuring out how we can do this. And then really, if you feel led, if the Lord really directs you, run for those open school board seats. It just takes one voice to just be, even if it's just an annoying voice to them,
Mhm.
but it's something.
Right.
Well, and I
It's
think
something.
above all of those things, the most important is to truly have that relationship with your child, or that they feel comfortable to say things that you can ask them, like, tell me about, give me some insight as to what was going on.
What
Um,
happened today?
Teaching them, like, this maybe isn't right. When my daughter was talking about the assignment,
hash,
it's called ethnic hash, about the paints and all that stuff. I really said I would really think that it would be great. Like, I really tried to encourage her. Like, I really think you should say something. Speak up. Don't be afraid. What is she gonna do? Yell at you? Kick you out of class? Great. Please. I hope she does. Like, I was bored at work. Let's go. Just kidding. I'm a very non-aggressive person. But just having that ability to have that open conversation. My daughter, honestly, at one point during 2020 said Black Lives Matter, and I said, no, let's sit down and have a conversation
About
with
what
your
this really
stepfather who is Black, so that we can talk about what this truly means.
Right.
And
do you know why you're even saying it?
Yes, and
that's
she
it.
didn't. It was
Right.
because everybody else was
Everybody
doing
else
it.
was doing it.
So she thought that was what was,
Right.
good. And so just to have those hard conversations with your kids. Are there racist people out there? Yes. But you know what? I'm going to teach you and tell you that you can reach the stars, shoot for them. You're going to achieve great things no matter what. And that's really the conversations that we should be having with our children. But just kind of encouraging them, empowering them. Now that I know the panorama surveys are not mandatory, they cannot grade. I want you to stand up when the teacher says it's for a grade and say, no,
My
it's
mom
not.
says no, bye.
Yeah, to just at least have that conviction to stand on,
Right.
to trust in God that I am truly doing what I need to be doing right now. This is, to sit here and be silent is not right.
Right.
And to encourage them to help.
And lastly,
Speak
I would
up.
say prayer.
Yeah.
We need to be praying. We need
Yeah.
to be praying for our schools and for our children.
Yeah.
And letting your kids see that, because that's
they're-
really powerful.
When they're getting hit with anti-Christian, agenda constantly, to show them, like, nope, we're still gonna pray, we're still gonna keep our faith. God wins every single time, like, and to
Doesn't
teach
mean
them
there
that.
won't be a battle.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
We're judges.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for the work
Thank
you're
you
doing
guys.
and for coming. And
Yeah. Thank you.
We appreciate it. It's great.
This is a lot of information. And
Yeah.
That's
told
kind
you.
of a word dump
I mean,
on
I could
you.
do like 75,000 different things with
Right.
you, probably.
Yeah. Well, we'll probably have you guys back on.
Great.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you. I hope everybody enjoyed and learned a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.